Today?
Yeah. You need a pink equals this written on your mirror. I need to change masks and see if maybe that'll help me. This is down.
These are blue light.
Mine are, okay, so mine are too. Now this one I just can't talk through as well.
Call the meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Mr. Denton? Mr. Cockrell? Ms. Roulette?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next item will be the statement by the Board Vice President, Mr. Steve Majors.
As we begin this meeting, let us pause for a 60-second moment of silence to reflect, meditate, pray, or engage in any other silent activity. Thank you.
Okay, next item will be the Pledge of Allegiance led by the Board Clerk, Ms. Brandy Roulette.
Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ms. Roulette. Next item will be discussion and motion on the January 8th board meeting minutes. Any discussion?
Make a motion to approve?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Roulette?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Abstain?
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next item, number 5, board meeting minutes, January the 11th. Any discussion?
Make a motion to approve?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Roulette?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
And Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next item, Ms. James.
Good evening, President Allen, the board, and Dr. Vinson. I would like to ask Mr. Rice to come up as our associate principal for the high school to introduce our candidates for the U.S. Presidential Scholars.
Good evening. As you all know, we have some phenomenal students at our school, and so anytime we get a chance to brag on them, I'm absolutely love doing that. So what we have is the Presidential Scholars Program. I'm just going to read you just a real quick little blurb about it, but it was established in 1964 to recognize and honor some of our nation's most distinguished graduating high school seniors. Scholars are selected based on outstanding leadership in the areas of academic achievement, community involvement, and positive character. The program also recognizes students who demonstrate exceptional talent in the visual, creative, and performing arts and who demonstrate the ability and accomplishment in career and technical education fields. So across our nation, only 161 students will be chosen for this award, and it's obviously one of the nation's highest honors for high school kids. So I'm so proud to say that we have 3 candidates this year. To my left is Kurt Wynn. We've got Brady Reed. And the one we're missing right now is Nicholas York. One other thing to brag on these guys, and they've got some really, really important news coming up, is that these are also our National Honor, National Merit semifinalists. And so they're going to find out whether they get chosen here really soon. So we are super, super proud of these guys. And they said they would love to have questions or anything for you.
Yeah,
So.
can you have each one of them come up to the mic, or to the podium, and then introduce themselves, introduce any special guest, and then we're gonna bombard each one of you with questions, so get ready.
That sounds like a lovely time. My name's Brady. I'm a senior at the high school. This is my mom and dad in the back. I've been to Broken Arrow my entire life from pre-K on. Went through Country Lane Primary, Intermediate, Centennial Middle School, and now I'm up at the high school. So
Where do you plan on going to college? Do you know yet?
I still am not completely sure. I'm looking at OU, the University of Alabama, and Georgetown right now.
Wow, that's impressive.
Boomer.
Brady,
Don't listen to him.
what activities are you involved in?
I'm a cross country. I just had to actually leave track. I ran track for 3 years in high school. I broke my foot for the 9th time and actually had to medically retire, I guess. But yeah, I'm involved in track. I'm in advanced leadership, NHS. I was in the Technology Student Association for a while. I loved doing that. That was fun. But those are just most of the clubs I guess I'm in.
Awesome.
Impressive.
Good for you,
Thanks.
man.
Thanks for
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm back again. It's a pleasure to see everyone. I always love coming into these meetings. Oh, my name is Kurt Nguyen. I am honored once again to be here to receive it. I'm not getting anything today. I am honored to be here once again as a presidential scholar nominee. Candidate. And so that's cool. Oh, am I supposed to introduce myself in any other way? What else should I
Yeah,
call
What other
Yes.
activities you doing?
Oh, activities I'm doing. Wow, that's a lot. So I'm in NHS like Brady. I am an officer in that club, and so I help set up things. I am the president of AP Club at our school. I recently started the Asian Culture Club at our school, and so that's kind of my school activities. Outside of the school, I spend a lot of time volunteering at the library. I volunteered there for about 5 years or so, and I've also shadowed at a number of libraries as well, including the OU Schusterman Library. I went to the NSU's library and a whole list of them. Yes.
That's cool.
Got any family
Do you have
here?
any?
Do I have any family here? My mother is in the parking lot at the moment. In her pajamas.
I don't blame her for not getting out.
She told me that apparently you're not supposed to wear pajamas in public. So, I mean, I disagree, but personal opinion.
Cool.
Now, are you wanting to get into library science?
I am. I plan on pursuing my master's in library sciences in the future.
Great.
Love that. Go on and get your PhD.
Go on and get my PhD?
Yeah.
Sure, why not?
Yeah,
Why
might
not?
as well. Just keep right on going.
Of course, all the way to the top.
Well, I have to say, also for Nick York, for you all to stand out in Broken Arrow High School is phenomenon. Is a phenomenon because it's huge. We've got a lot of students. So for you to rise to the top here is one thing, but to rise to the top in the nation as a presidential scholar candidate, that is unbelievable. And I just hope you know your door is wide open. You pretty much choose what your path is and follow what you love to do, not necessarily what other people tell you to do. Follow what you would love to do.
Yes, I intend to become the greatest librarian in the world in the future.
There you go. That's what I want to hear.
Completely serious.
Any questions?
No, I'm afraid what he'll say. I'm not going to ask.
Congratulations to
guys.
each of you. And get a picture with Dr. Vincent. I'm having jobs as a part-time comedian.
I know. Kurt will be here all week.
He get you a gig at the comedy store. Congratulations, you too. Yeah, hi, congratulations. Next item, number 7, Ms. Dias.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Allen and Dr. Vincent and the board. This evening, I'm here to recommend a donation for approval for instruments to Rosewood Elementary School at over $9,000. But before you vote, I wanted to introduce Mr. Hutchings and Ms. McCarver, the music teachers, so they can tell you a little bit about it. It's awesome.
Cool. Thank you.
Dr. Vincent, Board President Allen, members of the board. It's been an amazing school year so far, and a lot of that is due to the diligence you guys have had in keeping us face to face and seeing students this year and getting to open up Rosewood and actually have students face to face has just been complete awesome. It's great. But part of the process in opening a new school is getting to hire new teachers and the best teachers for our students here in Broken Arrow. And I actually have one of our amazing teachers, Mrs. McCarver, and I got to interview her for the music position at Rosewood. And I was able to work with Mrs. McCarver previously at Arrowhead Elementary as the music teacher there, and was able to see firsthand just the sheer passion she has for teaching her kids. One of the main things that I've noticed with Michelle is that she brings an excitement and engagement in the classroom. Once the kids come into that classroom, they are moving, they are doing music until they walk back out of the classroom. And so she's a gifted teacher, and that's one of the reasons why we're here tonight, is because she always seeks ways to engage her students. And I'm going to stop talking and let her actually tell you what she's going to do.
Good evening, Mr. Allen and Dr. Vincent and members of the board. One exciting thing about being at a new school is getting to build the program from the ground up. It's also a frightening experience to build the program from the ground up, and there's a challenge with that because generally you walk in and there's not a whole lot there. And so I knew when I started the school year that we were going to need to write several grants, apply for several grants to be able to provide our students the same opportunities as they came from their other schools. And so I applied for the BA Foundation grant, and they generously gave us money to be able to spend on instruments for our classroom. And I also applied for a grant through Donors Choose. If you're not familiar with Donors Choose, it is a free nonprofit internet platform where teachers can create projects with materials that they need for their classroom, and citizen donors can choose to donate to those projects. Well, a month ago, I received a jaw-dropping email from a law firm out of Oklahoma City, and through several emails that transpired, I learned a few things. One, there was a gentleman by the name of O.T. Myers, who was an Oklahoma native, and he was a jazz musician, and he traveled all over the United States playing with different jazz bands. He also did one-night stands with the Tommy Dorsey Band, which is pretty incredible, if you know who that is. He passed away in 2010, but before he passed away, he set up a trust that was specifically earmarked to purchase instruments for students in music programs. So this law firm that was in charge of the trust came across my project on Donors Choose and reached out to me and asked me if I would submit to them an informal grant request with essentially a dream list of instruments that I thought our students would need or would need in the foreseeable future. So after submitting the dream list, I found out a week later with another jaw-dropping email that they had chosen to donate to Rosewood $10,000. That just doesn't happen, that just does not happen. So it still even seems crazy to even think about it. Trying to be a good steward of the money, I sought out a vendor that I've used many, many times before that always gives great pricing. And so with that, we're going to be able to start a ukulele program. So we'll have a class set of ukuleles. We'll have a recorder for every 4th and 5th grade student. So whenever they come up through the program, they'll have a recorder checked out to them for their 4th and 5th grade year. We'll be able to complete our unpitched percussion set by getting Tubano drums, sand blocks, and a ratchet. We'll be able to complete our pitched percussion set with metallophone and xylophones and this thing called contrabass bars, which is like a timpani for a general music class. Rosewood also did not have a piano or a keyboard, so we'll be able to get a keyboard and fill that basic music room need. But all of these instruments serve as a primary resource in the classroom to teach melody, melodic contour, rhythm, musical notation, phrasing, form, and certainly good instruments to use for improvisation and composition, which I think Mr. Myers, being the jazz musician that he was, he would really appreciate knowing that. I wanted to read something to you. I was just personally impacted by the legacy that Mr. Myers has left behind, and just the neat thing that Rosewood gets to be a part of that, but also that it gets to be a part of the Rosewood story. To see the faces of our students that will be directly impacted by that, but to know that this impact is going to last year after year after year, long after me even. To think that there could be another O.T. Myers that comes out of our program because of the opportunities that this donation will provide is pretty exciting. Mr. Myers was obviously a band guy. He was a saxophonist, but he understood that a foundation and a love and appreciation for music really starts at the elementary level. And that's one reason why I wanted to be an elementary music teacher, to be able to instill that love and passion for music. So now hopefully I'll be able to do that a little bit more effectively with $10,000 to be able to use for our program. So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. If not, I'll hand it back over to Ms. Dias.
Just an amazing.
Go ahead, Mr. Denton.
Just an amazing story. I love that. And I mean,
Truly
you know,
is.
you can just see your passion, and that's what, you know, you called her a gifted teacher. I mean, a true calling. You can see it. And so thank you so much for being there, being what you're doing, and to drive and find something like this and to be able to be part of that. Love that legacy you have instilled there. So thank you.
Thank you. It's exciting.
I want to backpack off that, and because first we want to thank the foundation. Obviously, I mean, that money would not be able to do what you want to do, but thank you for your excitement, because I know if we can see it up here, our children in that school are going to see it, and thank you for having that. There's a lot of reasons maybe not to have it the last couple of years, but thank you and all you do for our children. So they're in good hands. It's great to see.
Thank you. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun in that music room. Thanks.
All right.
Yay.
I'll make
So if you're good with it,
a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Motion and second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Roulette?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next, thank you, Ms. Dias. Next item, number 8, comments from the public. We have none. Next item, number 9. You guys be careful out there, especially walking to your car. Yeah. It's very slick.
Man, I'm telling you what,
Oh, brother.
very slick.
Good evening, President Allen, Dr.
are we
Vinson, the
doing?
board. Sharon, James, and I are here to talk about and celebrate some student progress that we've seen from the fall to our winter benchmarks, and then Sharon will do the secondary, and I'm going to start with the ECC and elementary data. We're going to be looking at STAR early literacy data, which is a kindergarten and first grade data, STAR reading data,
Ms. Ennis,
which is...
can I just
yes.
have for just a second? I just want to kind of premise this. All through this pandemic, we've had other people telling our story over and over and over again about how our students are falling behind. There's this huge learning gap where everything's a mess. I want everyone to pay close attention to this data, because what it is, it's a testimony to the work that our teachers have been doing. It's really, really good. Yes, we've got some gaps, but it's nothing like it could have been. And a lot of that is thanks to this board for being supportive of doing whatever it takes to stay in school. And it's also thanks to our teachers and our principals and all of our staff for, busting their rears to do whatever it takes to help our kids and make sure that they don't fall behind. So I was honestly thrilled about this data. Yeah, there's some gaps, but we knew that was going to happen. I'm really, really pleased with it. So, sorry.
No, that's fine.
Thanks.
So we're going to be looking at STAR early literacy, STAR reading data, which is 1st through 5th grade reading, STAR math data, which is 1st through 5th grade, and then Literacy Now data, which is Literacy Now is an assessment tool that we use to kind of hone in on the literacy skills by skill. So, I'd like to, if that's okay. All right. So, except now it didn't go. Oh, there we go. Thanks. So I shared trend data for STAR early literacy and STAR reading and STAR math because I find it very fascinating that if you look at the dip, so spring for 1920 was removed because we didn't test and we didn't do a benchmark assessment there. But if you look at the dip in 2021 fall, it's not too far underneath. This is early lit, but it's not too far underneath where we see after every summer. So I just find that really interesting, and I'm going to go, I'll show you, or it shows up more even with reading data. But if you'll, this is
tiny. I'm hoping you guys can see it bigger. But I want to point out just a couple of things on with some of these. This is looking at growth data. So on the left part of it, it's talking about growth in scaled score. But on the right-hand side, it's talking about growth in percentile rank. And so with percentile rank, the thing to think about with that is it's looking at, on a national norm, where we are, like when you're looking at just a student, it's talking about a student nationally with same age peers at that level where they are kind of like in line. So if you have like a line of 100 students, you can have someone at 99th percentile would have 99 people behind them that are reading, or they're reading better than. So in this case, what I found really interesting is that you have, well, particularly looking at Vandiver, they had an increase in percentile rank from 37 to 53, an increase of 16 places. When you look at schools that are like Vandiver nationally, if 100 of them were lined up, Vandiver started off in with 37 behind them, and they jumped 16 places to 53. That's huge. Yes, their scaled score, I mean, all across the board, we had triple-digit scale scored increases, which is amazing. But I was just so impressed. We've got Rhodes Elementary that gained 19 in percentile rank. And then even if you look at Aspen Creek Elementary, they gained 16. But even Aspen Creek Early Childhood, where you're looking at just the kindergarten there, because in the multi-age, they gained 4. I mean, so just the growth is just to be commended. And that's talking about just this year from fall to winter. So that's in the middle of distance learning. That's in the middle of sites going distance learning or classes going distance learning, and teachers are still pushing forward. So I think that's really, I mean, to be commended, all their hard work.
Just a quick clarification, just
Yes.
for myself as well too. So
I'm gonna go back then.
yeah, back to that list. So you're saying so this is comparing us to a national ranking as well, and so
It's a nationally normed.
okay. And then so either way, I mean that percentile change, that's actually refreshing. And the reason why I wanted to jump in on that is because I mean personally, I mean I was thinking, oh my gosh, you know, we're falling so far behind. I mean that was really a strong perception that I believed, and so I'm glad to see that. At least from and you know, to me, I think the reading is such a foundational piece to all of learning. So this is positive news. I mean, that's really exciting, the accomplishment that you have been able to get, you know, to achieve in this type of environment. So impressive. So
Agreed. And that, I used to not be a lover of early literacy, the assessment tool. Mm-hmm. I'm always a lover of early literacy, period. But the assessment tool, when I was in the classroom and when I was a principal, I would get so frustrated because I felt like what we were seeing in the classroom wasn't coming out in the scores. Mm-hmm. But in a little bit, when I show you our Lit Now data and how we're growing with literacy now, I think we're seeing a good mirror of what is happening. So I feel like it's actually showing us our growth is, I think it's consistent with what we're seeing.
And that's what's important about telling our own story instead of just buying into the rhetoric that everyone else is saying.
Right.
We've got to tell our own story instead.
Mm-hmm.
So with these jumps, this is this year, correct, that you're
Yes.
showing?
Mm-hmm.
So how does this compare to a normal year of the amount of growth that you would have?
Well, that's a great question. So look at this star reading data right
Next
here.
slide.
So this is a trend. This is trend data over from back all the way from 17, 18, and fall, with the only thing taken out was spring 1920 because it looked like a total drop because we didn't assess. So if you look at, especially in star reading, how it drops down, so you'll see like 57 in the fall. That includes summer slide is really how to look at that. Is that's where we're coming in. Then they bust their tails for winter, they go spring, and then we're seeing a drop again in the fall. Well, in star reading, we saw that drop over every fall, but even in this last fall, the pandemic drop was only 2 percentiles under, or percents under what we saw last fall. So either, that could be a lot of things we've talked about. It could either be our teachers did a phenomenal job of helping maintain skills in the spring, which is what we worked really hard to do. We also had, Imagine Learning was available to all of our students. So if they did that, that helped them maintain skills. And then they had the normal summer slide that we're seeing. So I mean, from this, we can ask a lot of questions, like what are things that we could be doing to help with the summer slide, not just the pandemic slide every year. So what could we maybe, like right now we offer summer school in June, maybe summer school, we need to look at different times in the summer that we could offer that so that they aren't sliding with the large time frame between ending school and starting school.
I think we can't underestimate the effect of parent engagement because our parents had to be more engaged through the spring and through this fall, and getting the entire family involved in the students' reading and progress. I think it clearly makes a difference.
So the 1920 year, there was no spring as a result of the COVID pandemic, is that right?
Right.
Is why we don't have a number?
That's why I didn't put that in there,
Okay.
because when it was in there, it went from that 64.7 and it dropped all the way to 0 and then back up because we didn't have any
No
testers.
assessment.
Yeah, so with this program through STAR, I was able to just take that out, and then you can see it kind of just has a regular up and down. So any more questions on that trend data specifically? Then you're looking at the same thing that you saw in early lit. This is STAR reading, and the difference in this is like you're going all the way from first graders, first and second, all the way to fifth graders. So you'll see first and second graders growing and reading at a rapid rate because they're learning a lot of skills that help with reading. Then you get third, fourth, fifth. They're showing growth, but then they're also not gaining like very specific skills. It's more like comprehension and fluency. And so the rate may not be as large. So you've got some fast rate with the first and second graders in there. And then third, fourth, and fifth are still growing, just not as quickly as the youngers.
Do you have these norm numbers in here that you said are the norms or average? What is that as far as an average of growth overall for a district?
What's the average growth?
Yeah,
so
because you have all of our schools there. Like one you might have, didn't you say like these average numbers of 37 or?
Yes, at the very bottom, that's going to be our district average.
Right. But
so
if we compare to as growth, we're at +4 as an average. What's the norm in nationwide or whatever of growth? What should it be? Should it be 8? Should it be 2? Should it be 1? What's the norm number there?
I don't know that norm number, but I can find that out for you.
Just curious to see.
I'll find out.
It will. There's another. STAR has an amazing report. So there's another report that will talk about what should the suggested growth be for that. So I can get you that information.
Awesome.
But if you look at just highlighting some things in, you have Oakcrest that had the highest gains in scaled score, but it looks like they only moved 9 spots ahead. But that's just saying like how far the kids came, like how low the kids started out in the fall and how much they grew as far as gaining skills and the rate of growth. But then overall, their average, they were able to jump 9 places if you're looking at it as far as the line. I'm a very visual person, so that's how I choose to explain things. But then when you look at Country Lane Primary, their gain of 12, that's really great. They also started out low, but you're looking at just 2 grades there, first and second grade. And some of those first graders aren't even ready for STAR reading because they're still in early lit.
You have a couple of other schools there that showed really big jumps, though. I mean, you've got Linwood,
Yes.
you've got Spring Creek, you've got Wolf Creek, and again, it just depends on where you start out, because you're going to have more room to grow if you start out high already, but I'm impressed with the data.
Me too. When we get into the lit now, I can even pinpoint some other specific growths. And then Star Math, one thing that's great at Star Math, sorry, I'm forgetting to move the Star Math, we're looking at in the 60s, 67, 75th percentile, or before we were looking in the 50s. So the math is impressive too. Yes, we have a larger drop in the trend data than we saw in the others, but I also think math is, you need to use it. They need to be using it, and so that's where, to see them pull it back up, that's where we're gonna, I'm excited to see what spring data looks like, so they have another more chance to bring that math data back up. But then Vandiver, they were also another one I mentioned earlier. I mean, their growth specifically, everybody grew double digits in math, but Vandiver grew double digits in scaled score, but also double digits in their percentile rank. So, okay, Literacy Now data. This is the program that we designed that's very skill specific. So what you're gonna see here is that when you start with pre-K, their readiness growth is gonna be higher than maybe a Lit Now growth, because it's talking about just being able to be ready to read. That's talking about front cover of the book, back cover of the book, things like that. So you're gonna see growth happening at Lit Readiness first, then more in Lit Now, then Sight Word. When you're looking at Park Lane, they have a multi-age there, so does Aspen Creek, but Park Lane's multi-age may be what's pulling that Lit Now growth higher, and specifically the Sight Word growth. And Liberty's pre-K, I'm curious to see what's happening in that pre-K, because you wouldn't see Sight Words starting until a student knows all their letters, uppercase, lowercase, and all their sounds. But they're all doing, I mean, you can see the district average there as well. And then kindergarten, district average, I mean, this is looking at large title sites, so we group them by their like sites. I mean, Creekwood standing out, and Liberty, Timber Ridge, all of those standing out with double-digit growth. Yep. Same thing with Leisure Park and their Lit Now growth. And then you'll notice when you move to first grade how you're going to see that Lit Readiness is going to drop off completely, but then they've got Lit Now growth. Everybody, I mean, I'm very pleased with the growth. When you look at small title sites, this one is very interesting because you still see the district average, but you're talking about students that are coming in with a lot less than some of the other sites, and the growth to catch them up is huge. I know for a fact, I've been in Arrowheads to watch how they're doing Hegarty, and I can tell you that's why you're seeing that huge of growth, that 22.9% growth in Arrowhead kindergarten. Then Linwood, you just mentioned, like we're seeing the mirror here in this Lit Now, which before we weren't seeing it. So they're not only are they showing it on the STAR, but it's carrying over on the one-on-one assessments as well. And then you'll see how the sight word growth, when you get all the way to third, the ones in third are those that we're honing in on those that are at risk to not pass the test. And so that's why you're going to see so much sight word growth, because that's what they're ready for there.
Now, you mentioned that Arrowhead was doing something special.
Actually, we're doing that district.
Okay.
I just have seen it in action at Arrowhead. But last year we purchased Hegarty, which is a phonemic awareness curriculum based on this Lit Now data, because we could see that. And phonemic awareness is anytime that you're making a sound but you don't have word or any kind of visual connected with it. So when they're just learning to rhyme or substitute, like with syllables, those things. And it really is just about repetition, and practice. And so the data was showing us last year in the fall, like, whoa, we need something that we're doing across the board. So we bought that. It came in December, and then the pandemic happened. But there were teachers that were using it through the pandemic, but then they started right away in the fall using Haggerty and across the board. So,
And Kristen, aren't I correct in saying that the teachers were asking for that too? They were saying we need more in phonemic awareness.
Yes.
They don't know how to sound out the words, so we need to help them with that. So.
Yes. And then when you're looking at that small title, I already did that. Non-title sites, I mean, Rosewood Kindergarten was blowing it out of the water right there, but all of those are just, I mean, we're looking at lots of double-digit growth across the board. And the site word growth really picks up in their first grade, and because they're ready for those by then. So that's why you're going to see that growth pick up as the grades go down. So any questions specifically over the data before I tell you like what our plans are moving forward? Okay. So just the game plan would be we're going to continue with our Tier 1 curriculum that has been implemented district-wide in 1920. That's making, meaning, being a writer, Origo, and guided reading. And then based on the Literacy Now data, we have already purchased the Haggerty, which is what I just talked about. And then we purchased the next step forward in word study and phonics. That's what you all approved last month. And so those have been coming in and been distributed, and we're already getting lots of people asking for professional development on that, which we've already started professional development with just the interventionist. With that, we just did our second round with Scholastic, and so that is going really well. And we're making plans for doing the PD for our teachers for the 21-22 school year to make sure that they can implement that. And then I'm getting ready to meet with site principals and just devise a plan based on their specific site data and find out how they're celebrating, because I need teachers to know how good that they are doing. So, if you know you're doing good, you're going to keep doing it, right? So talking about specifically how we're celebrating. And then working with instructional coaches, literacy coaches, and academic enrichment specialists to work with individual teachers that need to identify ways to achieve their instructional goals. So that's...
And again, a lot of this is results of, the board support, and because we've reallocated a lot of funds and put a lot of money into professional development and training and textbooks and things that we knew that they're going to have an effect on our early literacy, and it's starting to have a big influence, and it's because of the board's support.
And all of this is foundational skills. So what we're hoping we're going to see in a couple of years is that our third grade are going to be so much more successful because they have this strong foundation instead of really a Swiss cheese type foundation with all these holes. So
very good. Yep. Very good. Thank
Any
you.
other questions?
Nice work. Good.
All right, President Allen, Board, Dr. Benson, it's my turn to show you the secondary. I'm gonna let you click because I can't click and talk. Oh, here it is. I never can click and talk, sorry. I'll get sidetracked, so if you don't mind it, thank you, I appreciate it. Go ahead and go past that, that was her last. One more. Perfect. Okay, so as you get into our secondary, you guys are aware of this, that we start doing more high stake, I'm gonna take my mask off, I apologize. We get into more of just the high stake testing. And so what I wanted to show is the PSAT, because this is something we've invested in. And we do the PSAT suite where we're testing 8th grade up through juniors. So I wanna walk through this. I was gonna joke and say I feel ice forming behind us on the ground. So I'm gonna go through that. Please stop me or ask for clarification.
Well, and a quick clarification, the PSAT from the 8th grade all the way up to the high school, it's all aligned, and the end goal is to do really well in the SAT.
Correct.
That's our end goal.
Yes. And this is where the PSAT is how you qualify for national merits too. So the first set of scores that I'm showing you are our PSAT for the National Merit Test. That's what that NMSQT stands for. These are 143 of our top scholars. So we identified the top 10% of our high school students based on the PSAT 10 test that they took. We identify them, we invite them to test, and we pay for the test, because this keeps money from being an issue where kiddos, it's equitable for us. So we have
the top 10% come in. As you can see, I was excited to see this because we tested 143 students. When you compare to the state and to the total group, which is the national scoring, we're 1167 as our mean score, and the national level was 1041, and the state was 1070. We are knocking it out of the park right
Well,
there.
and keep in
I'm
mind that
so
state
excited.
number, I want to kind of focus on that, 3,000 kids in the entire state.
Yeah.
That's not all the kids in the state.
No.
That's a very select group of students, so we are
They're
really
testing their
doing
top
well.
ones as well.
Yeah.
Yes, correct, Dr. Vince. That's, and what I would like to do on here is consider the top, maybe increasing it to the top 15%, because we're probably inviting around 200. Not all kids are going to do that. I think if we opened it up a little bit more, we may get some of those kids that weren't feeling well in that first piece at 10, and maybe we can get more, because our goal, one of our goals that we've set, is to increase the number of national merit students that we have. And I think that might be one.
I think that's a great idea, because you never know when a kid's going to peak in their growth. I mean,
Absolutely.
It might be suddenly that math
Yes.
makes sense to them, so.
So the next set of scores I'm going to show you is our 10th graders for the PSAT for 10th graders. For this, we test all 10th graders. Most districts, I can't speak for everyone, but a majority of districts that I know and interact with and know people, they only test their top people for this as well, or who sign up. They do a sign up and just however many. We tested 1,055 students, which ends up being 35% of the students that were tested in the state of Oklahoma. So our scores are a little bit lower, but I still say it's because we're testing all students. We're not identifying that top 10% just for this test.
So to compare us against nationwide, because we're competing against kids all over the entire nation.
Yeah.
Most other states do test all of their kids. They don't just test a small group.
Exactly.
So this is good practice.
So our total mean is about 50 points off, and our English writing, we're 463. We're about 20 points. If you think about it, 20 points is probably 2-3 questions. And we increase 2 or 3 questions, we're going to increase our scores. If we look at it like that, as opposed, it's very misleading sometimes, even for myself. I think, oh my gosh, 30 points. But that really can be 2 or 3 questions that bump us up a little bit. And so our math, which has been a pattern for us, our English and writing and reading, we're built on a rock, kind of what Kristen just shared with you. We're strong there. Our math, we're improving, but we're still trying to look for ways to increase that. So I feel like we're doing a great job there with those 10th graders. So the next set I'm going to show you is the 9th grade. This is early college high school. They are taking the 10th grade PSAT because the point for them is really they are first gen at-risk kiddos who say, I want to go to college, and we're trying to help them build that foundation so they can be successful. So we tested 58 9th graders with this PSAT 10, and they scored 933 as their mean average, which I thought was awesome. We're at the state is 997, and the national group would be 943. But even though we're lower, we're still, I feel like there. I think we're in the right area, and that we're continuing to grow and support them.
And again, look at that state number. There were only
Yeah.
343
Yes.
students that were tested. So that's other districts are testing their top kids.
Yeah, and we're testing almost 20% at that point, at that number. On the next piece, and please don't let me go too fast, guys, if you want me to slow down. On this one, we're looking at BAFA. So we have BAFA take the 9th grade PSAT. So they're doing the PSAT 8 9th grade suite of tests. Our district, we tested 976, which is almost 55% of the tests given in the state of Oklahoma was broken arrow kiddos. Our total score mean is 853. The national norm is about I'm sorry guys, I don't have my glasses on.
882.
882, and then the state's 872. We're still in the pack. I don't feel like we're far. We could be leading it. I think we'll be there. We're there. We're gonna get better, but I don't feel like we're so far off. Again, we're talking about 1, 2, maybe 3 questions. The English 441, we're right there. We're doing great. Again, math is where we're saying we're seeing a pattern, and so we are continuing to work on that and address that and close that. The one thing I was going to speak in a second, but I'll go ahead and say it now, is that the PSAT and the SAT measure critical thinking skills. Kids have to be able to read, gather the information, and apply it to the question. It's not multiple choice. It's not read here and then answer the question. They have to have their critical thinking, and that's what we're trying to focus on in our plans. The last one that I'll share with you on the PSAT is the 8th graders. This shows all middle school. It's broken down at the top as a district as a whole. We tested 60% of the tests given. So we tested 1,025 8th graders. Their mean was 807. The state was 811, so we're right there. The English was 418. We were scoring higher than the national mean for that, and we're just 1 point below the state mean average. Math, we're at 389, but again, we're about 20 points off right there. We have room for improvement, but I feel like we're still in a good place where we can continue to grow and focus on. The trends, I've included the trends for you guys as well to show that. I didn't put them in a bar graph. I like this kind of graph for myself. This will show you how we did across the board. The one thing I want to share is that we do see where we go up and we kind of come down. We go up and down. And I think sometimes that's the grading of the PSAT. Dr. Vincent, it's not quite the bell curve, but it's similar to where it's...
They recalibrate.
Yes, thank you.
So they'll test, because they can only take so many students from each state to be national merit finalists. So when they start getting too much of a sample size, quite honestly, they'll recalibrate the test. And they're constantly doing this. Now, it'll be interesting to see what happens with the SAT now, since they're getting rid of the writing portion and just
probably see scores
concentrating on the content areas. So.
But again, I think, and this shows you how many met on that on this first screen right here. The second set is kind of how they did, how many met both benchmarks. Did they meet both their English and their math? We struggled right there just a little bit, but again, we're continuing to work on our math, and I place and the focus we have, we're going to begin to see the fruit of the work that we're putting out there. Overall, though, we are seeing that a slow and steady increase. On the next trend, it just shows you the trend data. It's just letting you see the 10th and the 11th grade compare, so you can see those mean scores. But I feel like the one thing not to be misleading is that the 11th grade are our top kiddos. So there's a big gap between the two, but I do feel like that's because those are our top 10% that we're measuring right there with that PSAT. But one thing I thought was great was our English reading and writing. We are continuing to grow, and we are very strong there, and we continue to work on meeting that benchmark. Again, the math is critical thinking, and we've had to bring in PD. And prior to the pandemic hitting and us going out, we had invested in Math Solutions, which was teaching good strategies for teaching math, and we could begin to see those increasing, but we had to come to a complete standstill after that, and we had to cancel a lot of the PD we had in place and teacher institutes, because they're teaching those questioning techniques that are getting kids to think at that critical level. Then the PSAT 8, I did want to show this on the next piece, because you can see the green for us, especially in our math for 220. We have a lot of green there. That is showing, we are showing improvements in that. But I would like to point out, between 2019 and 2020, we changed kids, we changed boundaries, and so now we're seeing that fluctuate. So next year, when things kind of like the bobber settles, the next year we'll see that comparison from 2020 to this October 2021 test, and I think we'll see that. But I was excited to see that. That was October. Our kids have been back a couple of months when they took this test. Right. So I feel like it's showing growth. We still have room, but I feel like we're on the right path to get there.
I'm glad you pointed out the difference in the questions on the SAT and the PSAT, though, because 20 years ago it was calculation. It was just like the ACT, and they completely changed the SAT about 15-20 years ago. And as a result, a lot of schools and a lot of students really struggled for a while of trying to figure out how to do well on that test. But it's a more valuable measure. Because it does measure critical thinking. Well, and it's going to be applicable to the jobs that they're going to have now. Yep. The jobs are critical thinking. So instructional focus, so what we did when we got together, we gather as our secondary admin and we meet together and we're like, okay, what are we going to do? We take the data, we need to see what we're going to do. So each site created a plan. They looked at their scores, their data, their patterns, and where their gaps were at. So they put a plan together what they're going to do. Some of the examples was questioning techniques. We have to ask kids the questions that call on those critical thinking skills. Remote learning or calling on the same kiddo every single time doesn't get us where we have to be. So we have to continue those type of questions. Also doing questions that are more PSAT-like. Instead of just remote recall, it's like, take these two things. You're going to read this piece of the Constitution, you're going to read this piece from a literature book, and then you're going to draw conclusions from that and answer. They have to be able to take what they're reading and apply it to the question.
Same thing, they're using science, they're reading social studies, they're drawing questions in the math questions and being able to apply it at that point. SAT bell ringers, again, those same type of questions. Kids have to get used to seeing that, and that's one thing our teachers are having to learn, how to write questions differently. Heart of Algebra is the foundational section of the PSAT in math, and that's one of the areas that were lower. So each side has really looked at the Heart of Algebra and the skills that they were a little bit lower in. Yeah, you can go on. I'm sorry. That are a little bit lower in, and focusing on those as our teachers and the department chairs are meeting together. We're creating CFAs that focus on that grammar and usage for English, because that's what they're measuring as well in the PSAT. Focusing on literacy, because a lot of it is that kids are just not reading in the pandemic. They're going home and they're staying online, then they're tired and they're going to go do something different. We're not seeing kids read as much, and I think we're seeing that kind of affect us a little bit in our literacy. And again, continuing to review our scope and sequence. We have to see what are those standards that we need to be focusing on that are our para standards, and the others are not so much, and go deeper into the material and curriculum for those kids, so we can continue to expand their knowledge base. Any questions for 8th through 12th grade right there? Okay. Now, yeah, please.
This PSAT 8 district growth.
Uh-huh.
And I'm going back, and I'm wondering why. Is it Oneida Ridge? Why
Yes.
they were the highest and now they're not showing any growth there? What's the deal?
Yeah, I think it's just a changing and the students changing, and looking at that, they had some changes in staff, and that's one thing that when I spoke with Mr. Sagely, kind of like, and he looked at that, like, why did we see this decline? What is happening that we missed or we didn't have? I mean, and that's really reviewing that to see what we can do and what we can do differently. So I can't answer to why we're seeing that right there. It shouldn't have, it doesn't make what I expected, and obviously, but it was. But I did like to see, like in math, they made a big dip down, but then they slowly did come back up. There was a gap. They're still a little bit behind, but they're still making that increase.
All right. Just curious.
I know it's an anomaly,
I mean,
and sometimes
everything
I think
else looks
that.
good there, and then
Yeah.
that one, it's like, what?
I know.
And sometimes it'll just be a different group of kids. You know, you
Huh?
have different groups of kids from year to year.
That the year that we moved all the EL speakers, English language kiddos for 2 years.
Were they at Oneida then before Sequoia?
Oh, I think you're right. Yep.
Which, so, I mean, Mr.
Yeah, we'll
Sadie
have-
can disaggregate that data and look at those specific
Yeah.
kiddos, because that's probably part of it.
Could have an effect.
Glad you said that. That was pre-me, so I didn't realize that they had the.
They hadn't been there, then they were, and now they're
Okay.
back at their home sites.
Yep.
so.
That does make sense. Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions? I don't want to rush you. Okay, so 6th through 8th grade, we look at that. One of the things is the STAR data. We can do the STAR test for our 6th and 7th and 8th graders. We gave the test in the fall, and we were pretty excited because our scores were, we didn't see the loss, kind of like what Kristen shared. We felt like they were pretty common what we had been. But when we took that this winter, we have a historical winter dip, and it went down. And so what we did with that is the middle schools looked at what they're doing for 6th and 7th graders and saying, what can we do to address that? Where are we struggling? If you'll move to that next thing. One of the things when we were looking at that is that you can run the reports on STAR, and you can see every single kiddo, and it'll tell you this kid is at and above, he's at where he needs to be, or he needs intervention, or it's an urgent intervention. They know every single kid, and they ran that, so they know who and where they're at so that they can address that. Each site has come up with their own intervention program where they can begin looking at that and intervening. The one thing I would like to say is we purchased iExcel. Guys helped us purchase that and approve that purchase. iExcel is an intervention and an enrichment program, which is phenomenal, and it's aligned with our state standards, and it's aligned with the state. The teachers really, really like it. Kids have been using it. And we feel like it intervenes. It starts back. It'll take a kiddo who's struggling all the way down to 2nd grade, but it'll also work past pre-calc. So we're also enriching kids as we see that they're struggling. So I'm hoping that we'll continue to see the growth and closing the gaps that we had during the pandemic, and then some of the times that we're on distance learning that kiddos may be struggling just a little bit. The last thing on that, too, I want to point out is the Oklahoma Standard STAR report. So on that report, we can run the Oklahoma Standards for each grade level in math or in English, and it will tell you exactly how many kids passed that and what they need to do. So each principal, I met with them last week. They've taken it back to their department chairs and saying, here's the standards that we're struggling. Let's go back and be intentional about addressing that in our lesson plans moving forward.
Very good.
Any questions on that? And then the comparison chart, I had shared with you guys originally, and I know Ms. Dias had shared it with the subcommittee. We kind of, I know Dr. Vincent had mentioned it, kind of wanting to look at that and see where we're at. So when I first did it and went through and counting all the numbers of students, it was like, okay, I thought I was expecting a lot worse, the numbers. I feel like probably there's a lot of grace, and teachers are seeing where we're at. We're redoing things. We're allowing things to be open so kids can redo things. But then I wanted to say, I wasn't really sure, and I think, Brandy, you had mentioned to Ms. Dias, and so Ms. Dias reached out to me, and we were talking about, like, golly, the numbers, if you look at it. But when I got to thinking about it, the high school has 17,238 sections of classes that kids can pass, okay, because each one can have 6. So I went through, and each kid, I counted over not just number of kids, but how many courses we actually failed. And when I did that, out of the 17,238 courses, our kiddos struggled and failed 1,624 of them, which is 9%. So we have room, we have to close the gap, and we got to help these kids get back on track to graduate and pass the courses, and we have that, and we're addressing that. But I wanted to kind of give a perspective from that point of view as well.
Well, and I do know that some of the teachers at the high school also are working with individual students. If, let's say it's just a final project they didn't get turned in or something like that, they're working with students to give them an opportunity to at least, because we don't want to just say, oh, you failed the whole course because you didn't turn the final project. Let's work together and see what we can do to find some kind of a middle ground here and recoup that credit. And something I also shared with Ms. Dias, Oklahoma State University has started what they call academic forgiveness. And so they forgive up to 4 Fs. You can retake up to 4 courses, and that won't even count on your transcript.
That's great.
I'm sitting here thinking, well, okay, if they're doing that, then why in the world aren't we considering something like that? And no, it's not a freebie for kids, because they're still having to spend their time to retake a course.
Right.
But the most important thing is that they learn the content.
Yeah.
It's not whether they're getting a freebie or anything like that. It's they learn the content, and we feel like they're ready to graduate and go on to what's next.
So you're saying 22% of the high school kids are flunking
Virtual, yes, yeah. What I noticed with that, because it's like,
does that seem like a lot?
It is. It's a lot. But what I notice about that is that when a kid fails 1, he fails 6. Like, we have either they're participating or they're not participating.
Middle school, the same way?
Yeah, the same way.
They just shut down.
Yes, it was like all of them or all of or not. And so I know Mr. Starr and some of the other teachers have made home visits to go and visit. They've been calling. Some of it, I think, are that parents aren't there to support them. They're having kids stay home, and they're just not engaging, not getting the work done. But it was shocking to me, the number of, it wasn't very many who had just 1 or 2. It was either all or none. That was where they fell. And so they have the list of kids who have failed that many, reaching out to them. What we're going to do, is this a good fit? I think, I can't speak to it, but I know several of the students tried to go back to in-person when the parents were like, this is not a good fit for us. We can't support kiddos. We're not home. They're not staying on task. They aren't getting on the computer. They're not putting the time in. And so a lot of those students return back to in-person. So
And I know, I know Ms. Turner's staff at Options also is working with a lot of those families to try to accept more and more and more students into Options so that we can serve those students in different ways, because they can recoup their credits more and faster than in a traditional setting at the Options.
One of the couple of things we're doing too, for early college high school, there were 20 kiddos. There were 25, but now there's 20. But what they did, they were quarantined during their finals. So what we're allowing them to do, or what Dr. Garrett's put in place, is that they are closing that gap. They'll go back and retake the test, and then they can pass that first semester. So it's not all or none. She left the grade like it was instead of doing an I. She said, I'm gonna leave the grade, so you're motivated to stay on and follow up and finish the test that we have for you. So once that'll be reflected, once those kids go back in.
So it's more like an incomplete in
It
college?
is, yes. And we can do that with our virtual as well.
Do we have a cutoff point? What's the date of that cutoff point for the incomplete?
She set that, she told me that she had just started that and kind of filling that in, some of them. So it's like when they get back. So she's
Just working
basically
one-on-one
was going.
with them? Okay.
We did that for some of our AP courses. Some of them got started late. We struggled getting the books, so we did the same thing for them. the grade is what it is, that way their kids know, and it gives them a ticking clock in the background. But we're allowing them to make that up, and they have to be at certain points. So we have about 100 and something kids who are at the high school who we're giving that opportunity. You see the F, that way you're kind of motivated to get that piece finished, and we'll go back and change the grade and update that once you complete that.
With our virtual, are we making it, virtual is an option, but also you're required to pass all your classes in order to be able to take virtual?
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're going to create something that's very similar to what the results have had at the other virtual school in Oklahoma, that the percentage is what it is. So, I mean, are we thinking about that? Is that down the road? Because we want to give everyone options, obviously, during the pandemic, but, it's not to take and just fail, it's to take and pass.
Correct, yes, and we agree with that, and we agree. And I know that's what you guys had set the precedent in the beginning, at the first of the fall. And so what we're doing is, we've asked a deadline, like, we don't want people jumping ship back and forth. So we're like, here's your deadline. But then each individual thing that happens, we look at that student and say, it's not good, let's put you back, and we give them that option to go back. Some parents are just, they're not wanting to, or they say, no, they can't do that, I'm too scared of COVID, but yet they won't commit. So we're continuing to call and intervene. So every week, the roster teachers are reaching out to them and the student and the parent, and then Mr. Starr and Ms. Fry call on Friday every kid that's failing, and we're constantly having that conversation. I think another thing we're doing too, as some parents are realizing that and they're making it up, we've asked for scholarships to do night courses or summer, and we're telling them, yes, we will offer that. We're not going to charge you for that. We can take care of that fee and not charge anything to come in and do a night course or a summer school as an option as well. Oh yeah, please, Ms. Dice. No.
I should be talking from here, but
No. No.
It's all good.
What we're going to do too, we're talking about it at the March board meeting, but we are going to work on having kind of like a contract for next year's kiddos, because we've learned through trial and that there are some things like that we don't have written in, like our handbook. We don't have them sign anything, so we had parents who came in and then they could go back and forth. So that has been one thing our teams are even working on, is a handbook for next year, so we don't, if a kid is unsuccessful, we can say in the handbook that you signed, we're going to go ahead and make the transition back to virtual or where you be more successful. So we're going to go over that in March.
I'm glad you brought that up, Ms. Dias. Slipped my mind as I'm sitting here. Is there any other thoughts or questions? And we'll continue to close those gaps and know the students. That's one thing Ms. Dias said to my team admin when we met. She's like, we need to know the kids. You need to know the kids at your site who are struggling, and have that one-on-one and understand that we need to close the gap, get a hold of parents, get them involved, and see what we can do to help stop the hemorrhage for some of these kiddos that are struggling. So
I appreciate the work and time that your team put into this to make sure that our sites do have that information and that data, because a lot of times you're just not aware as a site leader until you look at the actual numbers, and then you can address those.
Exactly.
But it's hard if you're flying blind. And I don't know, I mean, I can't speak for anyone else, but for me, it's a little bit of a relief to know that, yes, we have some gaps, but it is not the doom and gloom that we're hearing from all the other rhetoric, that we have quite a different story to tell.
Well, and even with the virtual stuff that's going on, I mean, I'm extremely happy to see, even though it's not where we want it to be, but to be able to specifically get down to that individual level, that granularity, I mean, I think is instrumental, because I mean, again, we don't want any child falling through the cracks, and that gives me comfort, at least knowing that, okay, we don't have this cloud out here of somebody just falling in it and, on this squirrel cage of just round and round and round and not gaining anything. So I'm glad to see that we're looking deep into that.
Yeah, and I think it's helping us identify the right kiddo, who is a good fit for virtual, and how we can support them, and what's not working that we're doing, so we can get better. Because 80% of the kids are passing, and which is great. So what are we doing that 80% or those students have the right skill set? What do we need to do to help support that and grow those families, so if they do want to take advantage of that, they'll have the right skill set and the right resources. And I think that's where we're really trying to dig down and figure out what we can do to help close that gap with them. So.
And I think at least we should celebrate that there are 3 that went down, right?
Yes, I know, right? I do. I really do. I'm
Celeb-
excited. And I think the PSAT is telling us that we're on the right track. And I think we're focusing on that and we are
Yeah.
continuing to.
Well, and that's
to
3 out of our
work on
5
it.
middle schools. I mean, that's good.
Yeah.
That's a lot of support provided there through this
Yeah.
pandemic.
It really is, so.
So we have to celebrate, right?
Yeah, thank
That's
you.
right.
All right, thanks.
All right,
Anything else?
thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next item will be the number 10, the general consent items.
Make a motion to approve?
Second that?
Got a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Ms. Roulette,
Yes.
Mr. Majors,
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes. Ms. Bergwall.
Good evening, President Allen, Dr. Vincent, members of the board. I have a little bit of a packet here, but I think we can get through them fairly quickly. So the first one I have tonight is the approval or disapproval of the MOU between us and the city of Broken Arrow for kind of in-kind services where they will discount, delete our building permit fees, application fees, plating fees, C of O fees, in exchange for the use of our facilities. They use our facilities quite often, whether that be for a public forum or some kind of luncheon. They love COM. COM's a beautiful place, right? And so with this MOU in place, we would give them our facilities to use, and they would not charge us building permit fees.
Questions or discussion?
Make a motion to approve?
I'll second that.
Motion and second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Ms. Roulette,
Yes.
Mr. Majors.
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes. Next item, Ms. Bergwall.
With that MOU, that'll go to City Council next, so we'll get that on their agenda. Our next item is a proposal for design services for GS Helms to help us with the design that it's going to take to demolish part of the Haskell facility. The portion I'm talking about, there was a map.
Did
in
we
your-
miss one?
I think you
I
skipped
think
one,
you skipped
Ms. Bergwall.
The
42.
The reject.
The
of
bids on the lawn.
Bids.
Okay, I am out of order, I apologize. So I would like to have you reject the bids for the mowing. We took bids for mowing, and boy, I'm way out of order. And it is going to be an increase of 38% to our current mowing contract, which means it would be a total of 39% of our entire maintenance budget. Currently, it's about 28% of our maintenance budget. And so we want to reject these bids and look at our options. And, you know, what are our options? Do we need to break it up further into additional zones? We broke it up into 6 zones this time. We did have 4 bidders in the past. We've only had Verta Vista bid it the past 3 times that we've bid it because we had the whole district together. And we had bidders telling us that we can't do that much. We have 33 sites that have to be mowed. And so we need to look at it again. Do we break it up further into smaller zones? Do we put it back all in one? I know we've gotten some names of some other companies that will try to get to bid us. Or do we look at having our own mowing crew? For the cost of, it's almost $500,000 that it would be costing us out of the maintenance budget. And for that kind of money, at about $34,000 a person, with payroll taxes and insurance, you know, we could get 16 people that would be working for us 12 months out of the year, not just the 7 months of the mowing season. So we've got to look at what our options are. We are in a hurry because we are going to have to start mowing here soon. So we need to have an answer by March, but I'd like you to reject those bids tonight, and we'll continue to look and see what's best.
Okay. Make a motion to reject the lawn maintenance services bids?
I'll second that.
Motion and second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Ms. Roulette,
Yes.
Mr. Majors.
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes. Next item, 43.
GS Helms, is that this one?
Yes.
Okay, so I ask that you approve the contract tonight for GS Helms to help us with the demolition, the portion of the demolition for the Haskell campus. Why do we need an architect to demolish a part of a building? Well, because it's the original part of the building and all the utilities start in that building, and we have to figure out where and how to relocate them. So we ask that you allow us to use GS Helms to produce those documents and bid that work.
Shell, that's located on 9th Street, correct?
Yes, that's
So
located on 9th Street.
Do we need to do any communication with the city prior to that demolition?
We will have to pull the building permits, the demolition permits, and actually we'll probably have a pre-work conference with them because there is storm sewer and what have you that runs through that parking lot, and they'll have to be aware of what we're doing.
In the time frame as well?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Make a motion to approve?
I'll second that.
Motion and second, please call the roll.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Roulette?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next item, 44.
Okay, student furniture for Vanguard Academy. I'm asking you to approve the purchase of the student furniture through KI for Vanguard, and we've had some fun with this one. We've shown it to our staff, JJ and his team. They've helped us select the furniture. We spent 3 hours last Wednesday picking colors and everything imaginable. So this will even be like the little project totes where the kids keep their projects. It'll be the butcher block tables that they're working on. It'll be the soft seating in the learning stair area. And so it's kind of all the fun stuff that helps us furnish and equip Vanguard.
Very nice. All right. Make a motion to approve?
I'll second that motion.
Motion and second, please call the roll.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Roulette?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Next item, 45.
The next one is the teacher furniture. Now that the kids have a place to sit, the teachers will need that as well. This one's going to look different than our typical teacher setup. You know, in this facility, those teachers will have an office. We're still using the L&M product that we have, but it's a different style of desk. It's a desk that will raise and lower for them. And then they will have a podium for the classroom and lab areas.
Okay. Discussion. Entertain a motion.
All right. Make a motion to approve?
I'll second.
Motion and second, please call the roll.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Roulette?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Thank you. Next item, 46.
Our next one is Synergistics, and as you know, Jaden Dykes is our energy specialist in the back, and Doug Value is with Synergistics, and they're here tonight. Moving through this pandemic, Synergistics, being the partner that they are, would love to try to help us look at how we can save additional money with our energy savings. So since 2016, when Synergistics came on board, we have saved about $2.5 million in energy costs. Currently, we have that savings that we receive in energy costs, and we split that savings with Synergistics. What they are proposing to help us with our budget this coming year is, even though we have a year left on our contract, to change that from that 50-50 split to a fixed fee, essentially saving us $100,000 in the fees that we pay Synergistics, and then sign up for another 3-year extension on that contract. So it's really, we'd be paying $21,500 a month instead of the $320,000 that we pay them now, about a 27% discount. And we appreciate that they have been such great partners. Of course, we continue to save the energy savings, and that is a guarantee through them that they'll keep Jaden on board, and they will help us continue to save money in energy costs.
Ms. Bergwell, with that contract, I mean, they're aware that it has to be approved by the board because we can't bind future boards to multiple-year contracts?
Yes, the way it was the same as the previous contract, where we have the right to terminate it at any time.
I'd just like to say thanks for, I mean, that's a really cool track record and something that has been really neat to be able to see, you know, especially during the time when we're talking about so much green activity and things like that, and then to be able to have that recurring kind of future savings as well. That's a nice savings there, and appreciate your hard work on that. So.
And in that time frame, we've increased square footage by about 200,000 square feet,
Right.
but we've decreased our energy costs, so that tells you the work that they're doing.
Yeah.
Outstanding.
Marvelous.
All right. I make a motion to approve?
I'll second that.
Motion and a second, please call the roll.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Roulette?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Bergwell. Ms. Eniff, you got 90 seconds.
Good evening.
No pressure.
Not even rattled. Look at that calm.
She's one heck of a poker player.
President Allen, Dr. Vinson, members of the board, if you'll allow, before I dive into the typical monthly statistics that we talk about for our expenses and revenue, I'd kind of like to talk about the budget crisis that Broken Arrow is facing. And I use the word crisis not lightly because certainly as a board, our longstanding board members know that we have definitely been through peaks and valleys of budget seasons and highs and lows, if you will. So in talking with Dr. Vincent a couple of weeks ago, you know, we throw around these numbers like $1 million here, $500,000, $4 million, $3 million. And so what do those numbers really mean and represent when you look at a 10-year history of our state funding, which, just to remind the board, is a little under 50% of the district's funding. So what I'd like to start by pointing out is in 2021, where we are right now, we're at a $7.4 million loss from our state aid a year ago. The significance of that now is when you take into account the teacher and support pay raises that went into effect 2 years ago, we were funded a little over $11 million. $7.4 million was taken away this year. That's a significant problem.
Can we reduce salaries?
No, we may not.
Ms. Ena, a question on that someone may pose to one of us. So we are down 7 point by the state, not knowing if it's going to be the same next year or not. If you listen to OSSBA, the same thing we listen to, they're saying we're going to be flat, so I don't know what that means. But they'll say, but what we may get from a statement standpoint or comment is, well, you received $11 million in federal funding. So what's the answer to that? What do you say?
So Broken Arrow's story on the CARES Act stimulus funds is that we've received a little over $8 million in that category of funding. That is one-time funding, and so again, we're not sure with President Biden's administration what their goal is for public education and any future relief packages, if you will. Of course, we're grateful to receive that additional stabilization funding, if you will, but when you look at the breakdown of how those dollars were actually distributed, Broken Arrow in the second round of that passing is receiving under $350 per student, whereas the top echelon of some districts are well over $2,000. There was a very large gap of how those funds are distributed through the title formula because the goal was to get the funds out very quickly to districts, which is exactly what they did, but it was not in an equitable way. Going back to looking at our 10-year history, the losses that we've sustained over the past years have been manageable because of a couple of reasons. Number one, we weren't burdened with the teacher and support pay raises that went into effect 2 years ago, and we were able to withstand a couple $1 million here and there through our ad valorem growth and through our fund balance. But $7.4 million in a single year is not a sustainable plan to continue the progress that we put in place.
Well, and comparatively speaking, if we received $2,000 per student, we'd be looking at about $38 million, a little under $38 million in CARES money. So that's the difference, just plain and simple.
And
So just so I understand and everybody else understands, some schools that have not been in person and we are actually in person quite a bit, received a lot more than we did.
Correct. There is no differentiation between in-school versus distance learning or anything like that. It was strictly off title formula.
Okay. And we're one of a list of, how many did we say total schools were on that list of what we call, well, we got hit twice. Meaning we didn't receive as much as the state average in CARES dollars per student, and we got cut significantly at midterm.
So our midterm cut percentage-wise was about 9.5%. Those schools that were hit with a large percentage for midterm and a low dollar per student in ESSER funding was upwards of about 50 districts Broken Arrow was, I think, number 27
I
on
think
that
so.
list.
24, 27,
Something
somewhere in
like
there.
that. And so we weren't at the rock bottom, but we certainly aren't where we would like to be in terms of the relief funding. The other thing I'd like to point out is when you look at our student decrease this year, which most all traditional K-12 schools saw a dramatic decline in enrollment, which is very uncharacteristic when we've been seeing that 3% growth in Broken Arrow is, well, we receive less funding because we dropped 817 students. No, that's not the reason. The way the provisions work for state aid funding is we're funded off a 3-year high for our weighted ADM. And so we actually were not penalized this year, which quite frankly saved us.
And I know there's some conversations at the state level about eliminating that 3-year high and instead doing it on a yearly basis. But the reason school districts do that is it's impossible to budget. If you don't know what your student count is going to be and you don't know what your funding is going to be, how in the world would you budget? No business, no private business would ever fund that way. So we have to do it on an average so that we can budget our staffing and know how we're going to get through the next fiscal year.
The silver lining to this year is that in listening to Governor Stitt's State of the State address a couple weeks ago, there appears that there will not be a revenue failure going to finish this fiscal year 21. And so this $7.4 million cut should be the only cut that we received. In past years, districts have had to weather several cuts through the spring semester when revenue failures have gone into effect and the state has dealt with cash flow shortages and that kind of thing. But it does not look like we're looking at this to end this fiscal year.
And I think our next focus is to really focus on that. Should we receive additional stimulus dollars from the Biden administration, is really pushing our federal legislators to consider other ways to distribute that money other than just looking at title. Because COVID has affected all of us. Whether you're a title school or not, it's affected all of us, and we all need those dollars to recuperate from it. So I would encourage us to really look at average daily membership or run it through the state formula, but don't just say, hey, the easiest way is just distribute it through title.
And again, the scariest part for us as a district and what all districts are facing is the possibility of these pay raises becoming unfunded mandates for districts and becoming unsustainable if the funding is not properly funded through the formula. When they passed those raises 2 years ago, there was no guarantee that funding would be in place. And dealing with COVID, this has become a very harsh reality.
And, just a comment I'd like to make around that is, not long ago, we were having discussions about what programs do we cut? What activities do we cut? Do we lay off do we cut teaching positions, which ultimately increases classrooms? So these are very real concerns that are being brought up. And, the thing that I've heard from other state senators and things like that talks about administration costs. And so for us, I know that we kind of champion where we're at. And if you can remind me, I know there's this is the max you can spend, but yet I know we've always have run much less than that. Can you remind me what those numbers are for administration cost and where we're at?
So we're capped at 5% for a district of our size. And last year we ran under 3%.
Okay, thank you.
A majority of the time, that's political fodder when they talk about those things. And it's, you got all this trim the fat at the top, but it's really not factually accurate what they're saying because we're capped of how much you can spend at the top on administrative costs. So
and
it tends to get left out in the conversation when they're talking about your administrative cost. And clearly our district's operating below that threshold. So
and when we don't operate under that threshold, we're penalized through state aid reductions.
Yeah. So now looking at your numbers and talking about the title money and how it's distributed nationally, My only question on that, and I'll hush on that, is actually some schools may actually have more funding than they ever would have had even without the COVID pandemic. And now their carryovers now might go through the roof as a result of a pandemic,
Well, it's
which has nothing to do with being physically responsible, but outside of capitalizing as a result of a pandemic.
Well, it's kind of funny you brought that up because that's been a topic among our statewide CFO group of the penalty of carrying over too much money, if you will, and if the State Department is looking to waive that at all because of the large cash infusion that some districts will see because of this.
Okay.
We are not one of those districts.
I was just thinking about that, which is kind of breaks all the sense of school funding and being physically responsible.
So our goal for the COVID money that we did receive is to apply it to uses that we can spend right away and recoup that money as quickly as possible back to the district. Because the last thing that we want to demonstrate as a district is that we're sitting on funds that are not being used and that we're quickly using those to maintain our operations, which is exactly what those funds are meant to do. So we're using them for utilities, insurance, maintaining existing payroll, those type of things. Unfortunately, we don't have the luxury of finding creative and innovative ways to use those funding sources and expand programs and expand services to students like some of our districts are able to do, but we are truly using those funds to maintain baseline operations.
Thank you.
May I answer any other questions on that before I go into the regular data? You can already see our state aid start to lag from where we were last year from the cut that we received in January. Ad valorem, again, our big month was in January. I do foresee some payment timing issues with some of our current year projections because we still are under collecting a little bit from where our valuation growth was at the beginning of the year. And in that federal source of revenue, you will see, again, kind of a widening gap of money collected through those ESSER relief funds and a decline in our state aid. Building fund, the same situation with ad valorem dollars. And child nutrition, you know, I point this out every month, just how hard child nutrition has been impacted in the local sources of revenue, you know, down $2 million basically from where we were last year. But they are doing a great job of still being able to maintain their baseline operations. We have not had to utilize general fund for any of their expenses, payroll, or anything else. So that's definitely a positive. You can see, again, the salaries and benefits are pretty much consistent from where we were last year. Supplies, it's expensive to have school in a pandemic. So we're expending more in consumable supplies, cleaning, PPE, and that's definitely one of the consequences of being in person. May I answer any questions on the budget?
Better spend that money so that that balance goes down and you get in trouble.
We're working on it.
Thank you, Natalie. Next item, number 48.
The next item, I'd like to ask the board to approve the preliminary official statement of our $30 million taxable general obligation bonds. The reason that this is being brought forth to the board as a separate item as opposed to approved back in January when the sale date was set and approved is We've taken considerable time to vet this with our financial advisor and bond counsel to make sure that this document very accurately reflects all of the information that goes out to our bond bidders. So again, this document has been thoroughly vetted by bond counsel and our financial advisor.
Questions or discussion?
Make a motion to approve?
I'll second that.
Motion and second, please call the roll.
Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Ms. Roulette,
Yes.
Mr. Majors,
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes, thank you. Next item is new business. We have none. Next item will be moved to executive session.
Make a motion that we move to executive session?
I'll second it.
Motion and second, please call the roll.
Sorry, Mr. Denton,
Yes.
Ms. Roulette,
Yes.
Mr. Majors,
Yes.
Mr. Allen.
Yes. Guys, be very careful walking to your cars, please. Well, let's go 2 minutes. Two. I got a party quick. I'm ready.
It's fun when you're doing it roller skating.
Pardon?
Yeah. When you're 12.
Oh, go ahead.
You know, he says he wasn't speeding, but I was like, right, I'm not buying that. Yeah.
So here you go. You
Okay.
put your new password and the confirm.
Okay.
Has to be eight. Correct.
Okay.
Between
Wow. Okay.
look at this. Password never. Password never expires.
Did I?
No, no, no. It's fine.
So it's JW.
Yeah. That'd be a score log. Okay, now we put the server will be Outlook. Office365.com. 365.com. And you just go down to user and you just
Yeah, 1 minute.
yeah, that's a visual.
Quit crying.
them. Okay, now next. All right, yes.
Wait. Oh, okay.
Everything, now save. Okay, so you're set up, so you should be
Okay,
getting.
cool. Yeah, it'll update and start giving me all the.
What is your email address? Oh, here we go. Yeah, so
Okay.
take
Yeah, it'll take a while to download.
51, acknowledge the board's return to open session.
The Board of Education and Dr. Janet Benson and Michelle Bergwald entered into executive session at 7:34 p.m. to discuss the employment contract of the superintendent of school as authorized by Title 25 OS Section 307B1 and to discuss the purchase of certain real property per Title 25 OS Section 307B3. Michelle Bergwald left executive session at 7:44 p.m. The Board of Education returned to open session at 8:12 p.m. This constitutes the minutes of the executive session.
Next item, discussion and possible action to approve purchase and contractual terms of real estate transaction.
Make a motion to approve?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Roulette?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Did you all vote?
No, I didn't. I've lost my,
Uh-oh. I have it hand by hand if you need it.
That's fine. Next item would be to adjourn.
make a motion to adjourn?
I second that.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Denton?
Yes.
Ms. Roulette?
Yes.
Mr. Majors?
Hi, Captain.
Mr. Allen?
Yes. All right. Everybody be safe.
Hi, then.
No, well, hey, you want to start my car before you leave? Hey, I'll send everybody that item.
That's a $200 bill to get you out of there, by the way.
Y'all be careful tonight.